A gunshot cracks the night, sharp as a broken oath. A mother's sob follows. Will death find her before the dawn? Snow whips across the iron flats, a frozen wasteland where the wind bites like a blade honed on despair. Jonas Reed rides into it, a shadow slumped in the saddle, his duster stiff with frost and the weight of old sins. His horse, a gaunt beast with a scarred flank and eyes dulled by hunger, trudges through drifts, hooves snapping ice like brittle bones. Jonas doesn't tug the reins, letting the beast choose its path through the storm, away from the ghosts that trail him. Tucked inside his coat, a crumpled paper presses against his chest, a map scrawled with a red circle, a contract for slaughter, and a promise of silver. No one left breathing. The words burn in his mind, heavier than the cold. Jonas knows blood. At 44, he's outlasted most in these lawless plains. He's gunned down rustlers, liars, even a judge who traded justice for gold. That one still haunts his sleep, a shadow that lingers in the quiet. This job, though, feels like venom coiling in his gut. 10 years ago, he lost his sister, Mara, to a bullet meant for him. A feud over land he'd walked away from, thinking it buried. He still sees her sometimes, 16 years old, braiding her hair by a creek, her laugh bright as sunlight on water. They'd been scavenging that day, two kids against the world, when a cattle baron's men came for their patch of dirt. Jonas fought, but a stray shot caught Mara in the chest. He held her as she bled out, her eyes forgiving even as life left them. Since then, he's been a wraith, the kind of man who silences saloons with a glance and makes dogs bare their teeth. He reaches Cold Hollow as dusk paints the sky crimson. Wagon tracks gouge the snow, fresh and jagged, curving over a low ridge. Smoke curls ahead, thin and fragile, like a prayer about to shatter. The air is too still, thick with dread. Something waits beyond the rise. He halts his horse, rifle slipping into his hands. No mistakes, not after all he survived. The scene hits like a hammer, a wagon overturned, one will splintered into shards. A man lies sprawled in the snow, chest ripped open by bullets, blood frozen in dark, glittering pools. Jonas steps closer, boots crunching ice. The man's hands are calloused, a builder's, his fingers curled as if grasping at life. A revolver lies inches away, unfired, its barrel glinting in the fading light. No other bodies, just silence, wrong and heavy. Where's the family? This isn't his kill. Someone struck first, and they botched it. Careless. Deadly. He scans the wreck, finger brushing the trigger. A faint sob, soft as a dying ember. Then a voice, young but fierce. Nora. Jonas spins, rifle raised. A crate at the wagon's edge sits askew, a tarp flapping in the wind. He pulls it back with his barrel. Two girls, maybe 9, huddle inside, faces smudged with dirt, hair knotted with straw. One clutches a rag doll, its button eyes glinting in the dim light. The other, Nora, glares, eyes blazing despite her trembling hands. Behind them, a woman, bruised and pale, grips them tight. Her face, worn but unbowed, locks onto his, her gaze a mix of fear and defiance. "You're not them," Nora says, her voice steady despite her small frame. "You're too scarred." Jonas lowers his rifle fraction. "Who's them?" The woman's voice cracks, barely above a whisper. "Men with scarves. They killed my Tom." Jonas nods, slow, his eyes tracing her face, exhausted, yet holding strong for her girls. "You hurt." She shakes her head, pulling the girls closer, her hands trembling but firm. "Swear you won't harm us," Nora demands, her small hands balled into fists. "I don't swear," Jonas says, his voice rough as gravel. The woman's eyes, pleading, yet burning with resolve, hit him like a fist to the chest. Pity surges, raw and heavy, stirring something he thought long dead. He can't walk away. But who's watching from the dark? He builds a fire under a rocky overhang, its glow hidden from the storm's bite. The woman, Ellen, doesn't cry, just holds her daughters, Nora and Lily, close, her hands steady despite the tremor in her voice. Ellen's mind churns as she watches the flames, her heart heavy with Tom's absence. She remembers his hands, rough but gentle, building their wagon, promising a new life in the valley. Now he's gone, and she's left to carry their girls alone. Yet this stranger, Jonas, with his scarred face and haunted eyes, offers protection she didn't ask for. She wonders what drives him, guilt, duty, or something deeper. Nora stares into the flames, her gaze heavy with thoughts too old for her years. Lily, the younger, whispers, "What's your name?" Jonas pauses, his fingers tightening on his rifle. "Ain't one worth giving." Nora snorts, a spark of defiance in her eyes. "That's foolish. You're more wolf than nobody." A ghost of a smile tugs at his lips, gone as quick as it came. He shares his food, dry bread, a strip of jerky, a flask of water. They eat slowly, eyes never leaving him, as if weighing his every move. Later, under his patched duster, Lily murmurs, "They said they'd come back. Said we'd all burn." Jonas scans the sky. Clouds choke the stars, heavy with snow. "They won't get near." Ellen's voice is soft but firm. "How can you be sure?" He meets her gaze, her strength a quiet fire that warms something in him. "Because I'm standing between you and them." Sleep dodges him. The wind screams, and Mara's face, laughing, then bleeding, flickers in the dark. What do they see that night? By dawn, he's buried Tom under a pile of stones, marked with a splintered wagon slat. Ellen stands silent, one hand on each girl, her eyes dry but heavy with grief. Inside, she feels the weight of every choice. Leaving their old home, trusting Tom's dream, now facing a world that wants her girls dead. She vows to keep them safe, no matter the cost. "You ever kill?" Jonas asks Nora as they pack, his voice low. She shakes her head, her jaw tight. "Keep it that way," he says, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. They ride together, Ellen and Lily on his horse, Nora behind, her small arms gripping his waist. His rifle rests across his knees, eyes sweeping every ridge, every shadow. Ellen's quiet courage, her refusal to break, burns in his chest. Not just duty, but a need to shield them, to give them what he couldn't give Mara. In Iron Flats, the man who hired him, Silas Dray, lounges in a carved chair, his eyes glinting with greed sharper than any blade. Jonas recalls his words, spoken in a whiskey-soaked haze. "Wipe them out. They've got papers, water rights to that canyon. The rest? Dust." Jonas hadn't asked questions then, too numb to care. Now those words gnaw at him. What's Dray hiding behind that smirk? 2 days of hard riding bring them to an old trapper's shack, its walls sagging under the weight of time, reeking of damp wood and forgotten winters. Jonas boards up the gaps with splintered planks, shows Nora how to spark a fire with flint and steel. Her small hands fumble at first, but her eyes light up when the flame catches, a flicker of pride in her gaze. Lily, quieter, scratches pictures of horses in the dust with a stick, humming a tune only she knows. That night, snow piles high against the walls, the storm a relentless beast. Ellen sits by the fire, her face half-lit, and asks, "You hunting them?" Her voice is steady, but there's a tremor beneath it, her mind wrestling with the fear that this man, their protector, might not return. "Yeah," Jonas says, checking his rifle's chamber. "To kill." He nods, his jaw tight. Nora, curled nearby, cuts in why. Her voice is sharp, demanding. Jonas hesitates, the answer caught in his throat. "It's what I'm built for." Silence falls, heavy as the snow. Nora speaks again, her eyes locked on his. "Teach us to fight." He shakes his head, firm. "Not yet. I'm keeping you." Ellen's gaze softens, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. Thank you, she whispers, almost too quiet to hear. Jonas nods, his chest tight. The fire crackles, but the air feels heavy, as if the storm carries more than snow. Morning breaks, cold and gray. A flash on the ridge, a mirror catching the weak sun. Hooves rumble, faint but growing louder, a heartbeat in the earth. Jonas curses under his breath, his hand tightening on his rifle. They're here. He presses a knife into Ellen's hand, its blade worn but sharp. Not for fighting. Cut the back wall if you need to run. There's a gulch behind. Lily grabs her mother's sleeve, her doll clutched tight. You staying? Her voice is small, but her eyes are wide with trust. Right here, Jonas says, his voice steady. Nora steps closer, her chin raised. Why us? He meets her gaze, her defiance a mirror of his own. Because you're worth saving. She nods, a fierce spark in her eyes. Outside, 11 riders crest the hill, their faces masked in black scars, rifles glinting in the dawn. One laughs, a cold, mocking sound that cuts through the wind. Jonas steps out, his rifle loose in his hands, his shadow long across the snow. Reed, a voice growls thick with contempt. Walk away. Jonas plants his feet. Can't. They're under me now. The leader sneers, his scarf slipping to reveal a scarred jaw. That wasn't the deal. Jonas shrugs, his eyes never leaving the man's. Deals break. The air erupts. Shots tear through the snow, kicking up clouds of white. Jonas moves like a specter, his rifle barking with lethal precision. 8 riders drop in seconds, their blood steaming in the cold. 2 bolt, their horses stumbling in the drifts. Jonas lets them run, knowing they'll carry his name to Dray. The last rider crawls, choking on his own blood, his scarf stained red. Jonas kneels beside him, his voice low. Who sent you? The man gurgles, Dray wants the papers. Jonas presses harder. Why the girls? The man's eyes widen, then dim. They know. He slumps lifeless. Inside, Nora peeks through a crack in the wall, sees a shadow fall, and pulls Lily close. We're breathing, she whispers, her voice trembling but firm. The storm returns at dusk, fierce and unforgiving, rattling the shack's frail walls. Jonas drags the bodies clear, piling snow against the door to block the wind. Ellen sits by the fire, stitching a tear in Lily's coat, her hands steady despite the weight of the day. In her mind, she replays the attack, the gunfire the girls fear. She wonders if she's strong enough to keep them safe, or if trusting Jonas is a gamble she'll regret. Lily watches Jonas, half dozing, her doll tucked under her chin. Nora, sitting cross-legged, murmurs, "You're not what they said." Jonas pauses, tying a bandage around a shallow cut on his arm, blood seeping through the cloth. "Ooh, the men called you a demon. No heart." Her voice is quiet, but her eyes are sharp, searching. Jonas grunts, knotting the bandage tight. "They wrong." Nora tilts her head, studying him like a puzzle. "Think you were." "Not now." He doesn't answer, his gaze drifting to the fire. That night, he dreams of Mara, her laugh by that creek, then her body in his arms, blood soaking his hands. He wakes, gasping, his hand reaching for his rifle. Stepping outside, he stands in the snow, the cold biting his face, but guilt bites deeper. Papers, what makes them worth so much blood? And what do the girls know that Dray fears? 3 days later, as they prepare to move, Jonas spots tracks near the shack. Fresh, too many for a lone rider. His gut tightens. "Stay inside," he tells Ellen, his voice low. He slips in the pines, rifle ready, moving silent as a shadow. At a frozen stream, he finds 7 of Dray's men, their breath fogging as they argue over a map. The woman's got the papers, one growls. Boss says no mercy. Jonas doesn't wait. He fires twice, 2 drop before they blink. The others scatter, shouting, but Jonas knows the ground. He loops around, cutting off their retreat. A tripwire he'd set yesterday snags one, a log crashing down, pinning his leg. Another bolts, but Jonas's knife finds his back. The last three fire wild, bullets chewing bark. Jonas rolls behind a stump, his shots precise. Two more fall, blood staining the snow. The final man throws down his gun. Hands up. I'm done, he pleads. Jonas looms, rifle steady. Why the girls? The man shakes, voice breaking. Dray thinks they saw where the papers are hid. Jonas binds him, leaving him for the cold. Back at the shack, Ellen's eyes search his, worry etched deep. Trouble? Handled, Jonas says, his voice flat. Nora watches, silent, her knife carving a stick. Lily hums, oblivious. But the threat lingers closer now. They break camp at dawn, the shack too exposed to stay. Jonas leads them south, skirting open trails where eyes might linger. His horse plods steady, Ellen and Lily riding in front, Nora's arms tight around his waist. His rifle rests across his knees, his senses sharp, scanning every shadow, every gust of wind. Ellen's quiet strength, her refusal to crumble, stirs something in him, a purpose he hasn't felt since Mara's death. He knows a healer, Agnes, in Raven's Gulch, a woman who asks no questions and owes him a debt from years past. Her cabin, tucked in a valley, smells of sage and dried herbs, its walls lined with jars of roots and salves. Agnes, her hair streaked with gray, eyes Ellen and the girls, then Jonas's torn duster, the bloodstains dark against the leather. Yours? She asks, her voice gruff but kind. For now, Jonas says, easing Lily down from the horse. Agnes nods, opening the door. Lily curls by the hearth, her doll clutched tight, already half asleep. Nora explores, finding a spool of thread to mend a rip in her sleeve, her fingers quick and precise. Ellen takes Agnes's tea, her hands trembling faintly, the weight of survival settling in. In her mind, she grapples with trust. Jonas has saved them, but for how long? What's this trouble? Agnes asks Jonas, her eyes narrowing. Dray wanted a family gone. Got there late. Father dead, these three alive. Agnes frowns, stirring her tea. You their shield now? Jonas stares at the flames, his jaw tight. Trying to be. Ellen looks at him, her gaze soft but piercing, and for a moment, the room feels warmer than the fire. Morning comes, pale and cold. Jonas slips out before the others wake, his boots silent on the frost. He tracks one of the runaway riders to Pike's Crossing, a ramshackle town of saloons and crooked deals. The air stinks of whiskey and smoke, the streets alive with gamblers and drifters. The saloon buzzes with laughter and clinking glasses until Jonas steps through the swinging doors. Silence falls like a guillotine. A wiry man with a burned cheek and nervous eyes edges toward the back. Jonas's voice cuts through the quiet, calm but deadly. Run, and you're dead. The man freezes, his hands raised. I just watched, he stammers, sweat beading on his brow. Didn't shoot. Jonas grabs him by the collar, slamming him onto a table, cards scattering like leaves. Who ordered it? Who killed a father? The man's voice cracks. Dray's man, Cole, said the family had papers, iron under the land. Worth a fortune. Jonas's fist drops like a hammer, cracking the man's jaw. He slumps out cold. Jonas tosses a silver coin to the barkeep for the mess and walks out, the saloon's eyes burning into his back. Back at Agnes's, Ellen and the girls wait outside, bundled against the cold. Nora whittles a stick into a crude bird, her knife flashing. Lily runs to Jonas, her arms wide, and he kneels, catching her in a brief hug. That night, Nora sits by the fire, her eyes on him. Found him? Not yet. Know who he answers to? We going? No, I am. Ellen's voice is soft, almost a plea. You'll come back? He nods, his throat tight. Yeah. Agnes packs him bread, jerky, and a flask of water, her eyes sharp. Don't die out there, she says, her voice gruff but warm. He mounts his horse and rides into the dark, the weight of Ellen's gaze lingering. Iron Flats looms on a bluff, a fortress of greed carved into the cliffs. Jonas knows it well. Killed a man in its alleys years ago, drank whiskey after like it was nothing. The blood had barely dried on the ground before the bottle touched his lips. That's the kind of place Iron Flats is, where guilt dies fast and ghosts linger long. He scouts from a ridge, noting the guards slouched at their posts, rifles across their laps like sleeping serpents. The iron gates stand tall, blackened with rust and soot. Beyond them, the Dray estate glows like a predator's eyes in the dusk, cold, hungry. Lanterns flicker behind thick windows, casting shadows that dance like ghosts, like the men Jonas put down in another life. He counts the guards, 15 at the gates, more roaming inside, their rifles catching moonlight like teeth in the dark. The estate is a maze of stone and timber, 3 stories of arrogance built on blood. Every plank, every nail, laid by men who didn't live long enough to see the roof finished. The windows are barred, the doors thick. It's not a home, it's a warning. Moonlight fades as clouds roll in, heavy with snow. The wind shifts, biting and sharp, tugging at Jonas's coat like a restless spirit. He waits, breath fogging the air, eyes locked on the estate. His mind turns over Cole's name like a gambler shuffling a worn deck. Dray's right hand, a killer with a silver tongue and a draw faster than most men can blink. He's the key, but to what? A door to the past? A lock to the future? Or just another corpse waiting for a grave? He watches until the first flake falls, then turns his horse and rides back through the dark. The land is quiet, blanketed by snow and silence. The kind of silence that knows things, the kind that watches. At dawn, he rides up to Agnes's place, the sky pale and the earth frozen. His horse is lathered, hooves thudding on the packed dirt. Smoke curls from the chimney. Inside, it smells of coffee and iron. Back so soon? Agnes asks, hands on her hips, eyes squinting through the cold. Jonas doesn't answer right away. He pulls a small knife from his coat, its handle worn smooth by time. He holds out. Nora's, he says. Tell her it's for carving. Agnes smirks, wiping her hands on her apron as she takes it. You always bring gifts before the storm. He shrugs, the weight of old sins in his bones. And you, she asks, what are you carving? Jonas looks past her, out the window, toward the bluff where Iron Flats crouches in the distance like a beast waiting to pounce. Gonna end this, he says, voice like gravel. Agnes nods, her eyes sharpening like a blade being drawn. Mind the cold, she says. It's a killer too. He give her a ghost of a smile. Ain't the only one out tonight. Then he turns, dusts the snow off his coat, and steps back into the wind. Night falls, the air thick with coming snow. Jonas sits with Ellen and the girls by the hearth, the fire casting long shadows across the cabin. Lily hums a soft tune, her doll tucked under her arm. Nora chews a grass blade, her eyes fixed on the stars through the window. What if you don't come back? She asks, her voice quiet but steady. Jonas meets her gaze, his chest tight. Keep that knife sharp. Carve something better than me. Ellen's hand brushes his, her touch warm and grounding. You'll try, won't you? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. He nods, the weight of her trust heavier than his rifle. He steps outside, checking his gear, rifle, knife, a coil of rope. The night is still, but he feels it. The storm isn't just in the sky. Snow stings his face as he rides back to Iron Flats, the cliffs rising like jagged teeth against the sky. He carries his rifle, his knife, and the memory of Ellen's touch, a flicker of hope in a life long starved of it. The guards at the estate's gates are lazy, their lanterns dim in the snow. Jonas slips through a dry gully, his boots silent, his shadow swallowed by the dark. The Dray estate looms, its windows glowing with warmth and lies. He moves like a wraith, his breath slow and steady. The first guard falls without a sound, his throat cut clean. The second gasps, pinned against a shed, Jonas's knife at his neck. How many inside? Jonas whispers, his voice cold. 18, the man stammers. Jonas binds him with rope, leaving him gagged in the snow. A third guard, dozing by a gate, doesn't see the blow that drops him. Whispers ripple through the night. Reed's here. Jonas climbs a side stair, slipping into a hall of polished wood and faded velvet. The air reeks of cigar smoke and spilled bourbon. Cole Dray's voice carries from a parlor, loud with laughter, surrounded by hired guns. Jonas peers through a cracked door, counting 10 men, their revolvers loose in holsters. He could end it now, one shot to Cole's heart. But it's not enough, not yet. He needs answers. He aims at a whiskey bottle on the table and fires. Glass shatters, liquor sprays, and shouts erupt. Jonas kicks the door in, his rifle barking. 5 men drop before they draw, their blood pooling on the rug. Cole dives behind a chair, cursing. "I paid you, Reed," he yells, his voice shrill. "Took a better offer." Jonas growls, reloading. Cole bolts, scrambling through a side door. Fire catches the curtains, flames licking up the walls. Chaos spreads like a flood. Jonas chases, shots snapping behind him, splintering wood and glass. Cole ducks into a dining hall, its long table gleaming under a chandelier. He fires wild, bullets shattering crystal. Jonas dives behind a cabinet, his heart steady. He shoots once. Cole stumbles, clutching his arm, blood dripping. "Mercy!" Cole begs, his voice breaking. "Go, land, take it." Jonas steps closer, his rifle steady. "You killed a father for dirt." Cole's eyes dart, panicked. "They're alive," Jonas says, his voice like iron. "And they'll bury you." Boots thunder. More men flood the hall. Jonas curses, diving for cover. 12 against 1, rifles blazing. He reloads, his hands steady, but the odds are grim. He slips through a servant's door, vanishing into the night, the estate burning behind him. Cole's scream echoes, but Jonas is gone. For nights later, he staggers to Agnes's cabin, bloodied, his duster torn, a bullet graze searing his shoulder. Agnes pulls him inside, her hands quick with a bandage. Lily gasps, "You're back," her eyes wide with relief. Nora steps forward, her whittling knife still in hand. "Did he pay?" Jonas nods, sinking onto a stool. "Enough." By the fire, he pulls a small carving tool from his coat, its edge sharp. "Yours, Nora. Keep carving." She takes it, her fingers careful. "Still sharp," she says, her voice soft. "Some things are," Jonas replies, his eyes on Ellen. She smiles, her gaze warm, steadying him. "No more running?" she asks, her voice a quiet hope. "Not tonight," he says, the fire's glow softening the weight in his chest. Agnes knits in the corner, her needles clicking, her silence a comfort. Days pass in uneasy quiet. Jonas stays, mending Agnes's fence, teaching Nora to read tracks in the snow. Lily braids Ellen's hair, giggling when a strand slips free. Ellen mends clothes, her hands gentle but sure, her eyes often finding Jonas with a quiet warmth. But the air hums with tension. Dray's men raid nearby, burning barns, leaving warnings carved in wood. Reed's next. One evening, as the sun dips low, a rider approaches Agnes's cabin, his horse lathered, his face pale. "Dray's men hit Willow Creek last night," he says, breathless. "Burned 4 homesteads. They're coming for you." Jonas nods, his jaw tight, already checking his rifle. "How many?" 18, maybe more. Ellen overhears, her face paling, but her voice stays steady. "What do we do?" Jonas meets her gaze. "We hold here. They want to fight, they'll get one." He spends the night preparing, rigging traps around the cabin. Wires stretched across paths, logs balanced to fall, a ditch filled with sharp stakes. At midnight, hooves thunder close, shaking the earth. Jonas grabs his rifle, his voice low. "Stay down." Ellen nods, her knife gripped tight, ushering the girls under a table. 15 riders circle the cabin, their torches painting the snow red. Jonas steps out, his shadow long and unyielding. "Leave, or you're done," he calls, his voice cutting through the wind. Their leader, a broad man with a missing ear, laughs. "Dray wants your head." Jonas fires. 6 drop in a heartbeat, their torches hissing in the snow. The night explodes. Bullets tear through the dark, splintering the cabin's walls. Ellen shields the girls, her breath steady despite the chaos, her mind racing with every shot. She thinks of Tom, of promises broken, and prays Jonas is enough. Jonas moves like a storm, dropping 5 more, his shots precise. 3 riders trigger a trap, logs crashing down, pinning them. The last flees, clutching a bleeding arm. Silence falls, heavy with smoke. Ellen emerges, her face pale but fierce. "You hurt?" she asks, her hands checking him for wounds. "Not bad," he says, her touch a lifeline. Weeks later, Dray escalates, sending a larger crew, 25 men, armed with rifles and dynamite. Jonas spots them from a ridge, their lanterns bobbing like fireflies in the dawn. He spends a day preparing, rigging traps, wires stretched across trails, pits dug under snow, barrels of oil hidden in the brush. At dusk, he strikes, silent as death. 10 men fall in the traps, snared, crushed, or shot before they see him. The rest scatter, shouting, their formation broken. Jonas picks off 7 more, his rifle a steady rhythm. He overhears 2 survivors, their voices panicked. Dray's desperate. Those papers could ruin him. The woman knows where they're hid. Jonas lets them flee, their fear a message to Dray. Back at the cabin, Ellen binds a fresh cut on his arm, her fingers gentle but firm. "You're bleeding too much," she says, her voice thick with worry, her heart heavy with the cost of their safety. "I'll live," Jonas says, meeting her eyes. Nora watches from the hearth, her whittling knife paused. "They'll come again, won't they?" Jonas nods, his jaw tight. "Let them try." Lily, curled beside Ellen, whispers, "You won't leave us, right?" Jonas looks at her, his voice soft. "Not if I can help it." Months pass, the tension a constant shadow. Jonas builds a small cabin nearby, its walls sturdy, a place for Ellen and the girls to call home. The land papers hidden in Agnes's safe promise a future, a well, a homestead, a life. Ellen and Jonas grow closer, their evenings filled with quiet talks by the fire. Her laugh, rare but warm, chips away at the walls he's built around his heart. One afternoon, as Jonas repairs a shed, Nora sits nearby, carving a wooden horse, her knife steady. "You ever miss her?" she asks, not looking up. Jonas pauses, the hammer still in his hand. "Who?" "Your sister. You talk in your sleep sometimes." He sets the hammer down, his throat tight. "Every day." Nora nods, her knife moving again. "Mama misses Papa too, but she smiles with you." Jonas doesn't answer, but her words linger, heavy and true. That night, Ellen joins him outside, the stars bright above. "They're healing," she says, her voice soft. "Because of you." Jonas shakes his head. "Because of you. You're their anchor." She touches his arm, her warmth grounding him, and for a moment, the world feels lighter. One night, a scout rides in, his horse lathered, his voice urgent. Dray's coming himself, 35 men, aiming to burn the valley and take the papers. Jonas nods, his mind already turning. He spends 3 days preparing, scouting a narrow pass where Dray's crew will ride. He rigs dynamite from an abandoned mine, buries it under snow, and sets tripwires across the trail. He recruits 3 local men, Eli, a grizzled trapper, Sam, a young farmer, and Amos, a blacksmith, who owe Agnes favors. They agree to watch the flanks, their rifles ready. At dawn, Dray's men appear, their rifles glinting, Dray himself at the rear, his coat lined with fur. Jonas lights the fuse. Earth roars, 15 men buried in the blast, rocks and snow crashing down. The survivors charge, blind with rage, their shouts swallowed by the wind. Jonas fights like a man possessed, his rifle cracking, his knife flashing in close quarters. Eli, Sam, and Amos fire from the ridges, dropping 8 more. 20 fall in the chaos, their blood painting the frost. Dray, wounded, his leg bleeding, faces Jonas in the smoke. "You're nothing." Dray spits, his voice weak. Jonas steps closer, rifle steady. "You killed a man for greed. Threatened his family." Dray laughs, coughing blood. "The papers, they'll make me king." Jonas shakes his head. "Not in this valley." He shoots once. Dray slumps, his eyes empty. The last men flee, their spirit broken. Jonas stands alone, his breath fogging the air, the past silent but for the wind. He returns to Agnes's at dusk, battered, a bullet scar on his cheek, his duster torn to rags. Ellen runs to him, her arms wrapping around him, her relief a tangible warmth. "It's done?" she asks, her voice trembling, her heart lighter than it's been in months. "Yeah," Jonas says, holding her close, feeling her heartbeat against his. Nora and Lily tackle him next, their laughter breaking the weight of the day. By the fire, Jonas pulls the papers from his coat, their edges worn but intact. "Yours," he says, handing them to Ellen. "Build something real." She nods, her eyes bright with tears she doesn't shed, her mind already turning to a future she can shape. Weeks turn to months. Jonas stays, no longer running. He teaches Nora to carve wood, her small hands shaping birds and horses. Lily learns to mend nets, her fingers quick and sure. Ellen mends clothes, her hands steady, her eyes often finding Jonas with a quiet warmth. One spring evening, by the hearth, Jonas takes Ellen's hand, his voice low and rough. "I ain't much," he says, his heart pounding, "but I'd stay forever if you'll have me." She smiles, her eyes warm and certain. "I will." They wed in the valley, Nora and Lily tossing wildflowers, their laughter echoing across the hills. Dray's name fades, his men scattered or dead. The iron flats grow quiet, the shadow of greed lifted. Jonas, Ellen, and the girls build a life, scarred but whole. Snow falls soft now, no longer carrying screams. Only the promise of peace forged through fire.